Welcome to The Drive with your automotive experts and hosts, Lauren Fix and Karl Brauer. Each week we deliver the latest breaking news, vehicle reviews, and inside look at what's happening in the automotive world. Buckle up, it's time to hit the road with The Drive.
Hello, welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl. We have got a great show today because we have got a great guest, someone very interesting with a fabulous background in the automotive world and in the automotive media world. And that would be Mica of TFL Car. He is a very successful YouTuber and also just a great guy who knows a lot about cars. So Roman, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us here.
Welcome it's so great to be here, guys. Thank you for having me on. I always love chatting cars and trucks, so I can't wait to have a lively discussion. So, it's a pleasure, and let's get to it.
So, Roman, I've known you a long time, as Karl has. Tell us about your TFL and how you got into this, because you have a very interesting background.
Yeah, so I'm one of those old-time YouTubers. I started back in 2009, back when YouTube was just starting out. And back then, it was so much easier because all you had to do was put some interesting automotive content out on YouTube and you would get followers. Today, it's become such a crowded and busy world that it's much harder to get traction. But as you know, YouTube started with an elephant. And when I got into it, like 2 years later, what actually happened was I had a car blog and I had a Lexus on loan. And my son, who was 13 at the time, who now works with me full time, was driving passenger or riding passenger. And we had one of those old crappy kind of flip cameras, it looked like a cigarette box that it flipped open and created a camera. And I had this Lexus and I was wondering, I wonder if this car will stop using adaptive cruise control when the car in front of me stops. And then Tommy had the camera, he was 13. I'm like, Tommy, roll on me. And so he rolled on me and the car stopped, nothing happened. And we put that video up on YouTube and like, oh my God, all these people came and looked at it. And I thought to myself, I have a background in automotive journalism. I was a TV reporter at one time. I know how to present. I know how to edit. I know how to shoot. So I took the automotive blog that I was writing and I created basically a YouTube channel out of it. And then since then, we've now expanded to, 9 YouTube channels. And we kind of decided that we want to talk to people the way they want to be talked to. So car guys and gals are different than truck guys and gals. And so we started a truck channel. And then because we live in Colorado and we have a lot of great off-roading, we started an off-road channel. And now we have a Japanese channel. And it just keeps kind of growing and growing and growing. We have a team of about 15 people that do nothing but, cover cars from a breaking news point of view and, do interesting automotive car content and truck content. So it's been a hell of a ride. And every morning I wake up and I'm like, when is this going to end? Every year I'm like, I'm still doing this. How is that possible?
Yeah, it used to be called the Fast Lane Car, which is now just TFL, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's over my shoulder. Yeah.
That's funny because I remember when you first came out with it and we're all like, I don't know. I mean, I had a YouTube channel back then as well. It was just my name, but it's amazing how things have changed and it's become a pretty lucrative business, but there's a lot of changes. And like you said, you were the first one to split into multiple channels, which I thought was really smart, where a lot of people just put it all on one. It took me a long time to split my channel. And actually you advised me, take the news away from the car reviews. And I'm like, that's so much work. It is a lot of work. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, I stole that from Peterson. If you guys know, Peterson started a small magazine called Motor Trend. And when, he started doing the car magazines in LA, he figured out the same thing that I kind of figured out, and that is, let's say that you've got a magazine called Hot Rod. A certain percentage of those guys who love building hot rods also love new cars. So if you got the team in place to do hot rod, why not do a magazine called Motor Trend? And by the way, those guys also love guns and ammo. So let's start a magazine called Guns and Ammo. And then he built this entire empire, basically just kind of recreating the same model, but kind of talking to people about the stuff and from an editorial point of view that they understood. And that's kind of the model that I borrowed for TFL.
Well, you obviously have your own empire now. So.
Yeah. Well, I think he sold his for like 400 million. So we're not quite up to Doug money, but we're happy just, making a living reviewing cars and trucks.
Yeah. And that specialization does really help, because if people know what they're getting into, whether they're buying a magazine once upon a time or watching a YouTube channel today, people like consistency. They want to know what they're what they can expect and consistently see it when they go there.
Yeah, and then the other
things
thing
are
that
changing.
I think we're good at is trying to, YouTube is the currency of YouTube is being authentic, and so we just try to be what we are, and that was hard because when you're a TV reporter, right? There's kind of this space between you and the audience, and when I worked at a TV station, we had this giant antenna out back, and basically it was a one-way medium, right? So you would go and cover the news, and then you would what am I not decimate, probably decimate as well, but we would put that news out there, people would listen to it, but it wasn't a two-way conversation. But with YouTube, it's always a two-way conversation. So in traditional media, the presenter, in this case me, would be more important than the audience, but in YouTube world and in social media world, the audience is much more important than I am. And so it's always about the community and not about me. And I think we understood that early on. And I think that helped us grow.
You were one of the first ones to figure that
Agreed.
out. Yeah.
No,
For
that's good stuff. All right, Roman, we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back. You've got a lot of interesting stories to tell from your past, so we're going to jump into all that stuff, and we will take a quick break and be right back with The Drive with Lauren and Karl.
Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl. This segment's brought to you by Issy Tire Socks. Winter roads, get a grip. Issy Tire Socks offer instant traction on snow and ice, and they're easy to install, like a pair of socks. Keep them in your trunk and be prepared. Available now at Amazon and on Walmart. Issy Tire Socks, ISSE, really Issy. Now, there's some interesting things that TFL does that most car reviewers don't. Roman, you actually buy a lot of these cars, which is a huge investment. Tell us about some of that.
Yeah, we have the saying that at TFL we love to buy high and sell low, which certainly happened with the Cybertruck. So we bought being first, like typical journalism, traditional journalism, being first matters. So we were one of the first to get a Cybertruck. We paid $100,000 for that, and 6 months later we sold it for 72. So I feel lucky to have only lost $28,000 on the Cybertruck in the first 6 months.
I was going to say, if you sold it today, it would be even much worse now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm laughing about it, but it does hurt a little bit. Actually, it hurts a lot. But we decided to take the Cybertruck and do one of those traditional truck pulls, where you go to like a county fair. And we live in Colorado, and eastern Colorado is very rural, and they do that out there. So we called this company that's putting one of these truck pulls on, and we said, hey, can we come by? And before all the people show up, can we just do a truck pull? And we also have a Cummins in the fleet, so we wanted to do an electric truck versus a diesel truck, right? That is a natural comparison because they both have a ton of torque. And so we head out there on a Saturday. The guy who was the promoter was really smart. He goes, you know what? We can't do this until the crowd show up. So they made us like an exhibition.
Well, that's actually good for the brand. That's good for your channel, so you get more people.
Well, it's also terrifying because now you've got several thousand people watching you do this, and there is a art to doing a tractor pull. It's not just, it's like drag racing, right? There is a lot to it. People build out very powerful trucks and cars to do this, and tractors. So we're the exhibition, and Andre, who's on my team, is driving the Cybertruck, and I go first in the Cummins, and the Cummins does like a half pull. And the way that it works is there's a sled that you're pulling, and there's a weight, and the sled has these teeth underneath it. And as the weight goes down, it slides down the sled. Obviously, it puts more weight on the teeth, and so it kind of digs into the ground, and it gets heavier and heavier as you go down the track. And so it's hard to do what's called a full pull. And so Andre shows up, and Andre's from just outside of Denver, from a town called Thornton, and all the people out there just hate the Cybertruck. This is very rural, very Republican, and they're like, go back to California. And poor Andre's like, I'm from Thornton. but the actual Cybertruck did really well. It actually kind of outpulled the Cummins in some ways, because obviously the advantage of an electric vehicle is it's got instant torque, and that kind of helps with the tractor pull. But the funnier story was we bought the Cybertruck as a foundation series, and one of the things you get at that time was the ability to do vehicle to load. In other words, when you bought it, Tesla gave you a box, which is a charger that you could put up in your house, and then if you have no electricity, you can use the Cybertruck to power your house, which is pretty cool. And it would have been really cool this week when we were out of power for 3 days. But what happened was, because it took so long for Tesla to actually install that, by the time they had actually installed the box at my house, the Cybertruck had been sold. So,
So why
so
did you sell it? There must have been a reason that you decided I'm not keeping this vehicle.
Was it the
maybe,
market
maybe
value drop?
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons is the value is dropping rapidly. Another reason is when we buy a vehicle, we maybe get like a dozen videos before people get bored of it. And then after people get bored of it, we've done everything we can do with it. And so it's time to move on to the next one. And it's a lot of money that's kind of tied up in this thing.
Yeah.
And so we made the mistake actually of, that's another one. Remember, buy high, sell low. So we basically traded it in on a Volkswagen ID bus, which come to think of it was also not a great decision.
Boy, you've got
You get
you got a
bad
strategy and you
choices.
stick with it.
Yeah.
Buy high, sell low. You're not going to vary.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't think that's a good financial investment move. Just FYI. Yeah.
No, but you could argue you're brilliant, Roman, because you found a way to make money buying high and selling low
Well,
because they make for great traffic on a YouTube channel.
yeah, just so you understand the kind of the finances behind this, because this is a community and we are very transparent. So, like I said, the Cybertruck cost us 100. We sold it for 72, and that video at the truck pull, I think that got like 2 million views or something like that.
Wow.
And that translates to figure out like 1 million views is about $10,000 in revenue. So if with that one video, I want to say we made $20,000.
So you broke even.
Well, and then we did 11 others, and so we did
Yeah.
make our money on that truck. But yeah, it's a unique business model, so I wouldn't recommend it to somebody who doesn't have a YouTube channel.
No,
I agree.
I
Well,
would not
speaking
do
of
that either.
speaking of making money, we're going to take a quick break and pay some bills, but we will be right back with The Drive with Lauren and Karl, and this episode, Roman Mica. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl. And this segment is brought to you by IC Cars, your best online search reference for not only car listings and which vehicles you want to look at next, but also a lot of guidance from data that is industry based. And that is one of the things I do for that company, and helping to look at all the changes in the marketplace and how that affects you as a car buyer. Which car should you be buying? Which car color should you buy for best appreciation to avoid it? Everything. So iccars.com. Now, you were just talking about the challenges of making enough money to pay for the buy high, sell low philosophy, Roman. But what other changes have you seen in the automotive industry, generally speaking, but also specifically with regard to reporting on it for YouTube? And I'll just throw out a couple examples I'm referencing. Things like the auto shows, which are still great consumer experiences, but they've kind of evaporated as sources for media and news for people like us. And I think COVID, has just changed a lot of the ways people shop. It also has changed pricing. Car prices, new and used, are just so much higher. I feel like a lot of cars are not affordable like they used to be. What have you noticed, Roman, about the industry and from your perspective as a YouTuber?
Well, the thing that I think I moved to Prague when it went from communist to capitalist in the 90s, and I started a real estate company, and I did really well. At that time, because of hubris, I thought I'm just really smart. And what happened was, I was at the right person at the right time because I speak Czech. I was born in Prague, and so I was able to kind of be this bridge between all the expats moving to the Czech Republic at the time and starting up businesses. And then I figured that out after I moved back to America and started another business which failed. And I think what happened with the auto industry and what happened with me is, once again, I got lucky. Lightning struck twice. I was the right person in the right place, and that is, it went from kind of a print-based media organization to video. And I kind of rode that video wave, or TFL rode that video wave, because what ended up happening is, you know this, right? There was a hierarchy of the way that reporting was done, and at the top of that hierarchy were the buff books. So I'm talking about Car and Driver, Motor Trend, Automobile, Road and Track, and then it kind of went down to the local newspapers, and then the media guys were kind of just, except for Motor Week, John Davis, you got to give him credit, he was there early.
Yeah.
But we were kind of just there, and then all of a sudden video became so important. And it's still, to this day, is very important. It's changing, right? The horizontal stuff that we're looking at right now is turned into the vertical stuff, and that's a whole different animal. And I think that really changed the way that people get their automotive news, the way they consume their automotive news, and the way that the people who are reporting that news and who they are has changed. So once upon a time, there were gatekeepers, and if you wanted to do this job, right? There was a saying, I think it was called the rule of 24, right? You would go and work for like Automobile Magazine or Car and Driver, and you were 24 years old, you made $24,000 a year, and you lasted 24 months, and you worked 24 hours a day. But now anybody can do that, right? As long as you have this and a YouTube channel, you could become an automotive journalist. And that's been good in some ways, and that's been bad in a lot of ways. Guys, I
Agreed.
can't tell you like how many emails we get every week, people asking us about the new Caterpillar truck that's coming, that's going to have 15,000 pounds of towing and 6x6, or when is a new Caterpillar, the John Deere truck. And so I think information has become fragmented, and we're living in a time right now where there is no central source and there is no fact checking, and that's the good stuff that the
Yeah.
magazines used to do, right? There was this like we all agreed on what the rules were, and now there are no rules and we can't agree on the rules. And I think you combine all that, decentralization and kind of the washing away of the traditional media model, and I think that's really hurt the auto shows, because
Yep.
people no longer need to go to an auto show as journalists, especially, and manufacturers don't have to go to an auto show to get the word out. They can do it themselves through influencers. They could do it themselves through people like us. But there's just so many more outlets that a centralized place for these things no longer exists.
I agree, and it's funny that things have changed, and there is sort of a hierarchy, except the brands have sort of gone with who they like to party with rather than who actually brings them numbers, as you and I have and Karl have all learned. Between the three of us, we have huge numbers of reach, people that listen or watch or read our content, but sometimes they don't bring those people. They bring people that are influencers that say things like things we've all heard. Oh my gosh, Ford makes trucks? I'm like, "What?" Like, are you kidding? You're kidding, right? Because these people aren't into cars at all, and those who they're using influencers for, but people don't buy cars or trucks or SUVs from people that don't know anything about cars, which is why your channel has done well, because those that are looking go to a channel where you actually can get real information.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this weekend, and I think, and I have a lot of influencer friends, and let's face it, influencers are, and okay, coming from a traditional journalism background, right? The idea that somebody pays me to promote a car, that to me really feels like payola, right? That to me feels like I am no longer objective. We are no longer providing real information. We're just basically getting paid to promote a product, which is advertising, which is fine, and I get
Right.
that. Uh, but if you're an influencer and a brand comes to you and says, "Hey, we'll pay $10,000 and we'll fly you halfway around the world to do a 60-minute TikTok," that's success in my world, right? Because you don't have that background that I have. You haven't, I got my master's degree from Medill, which I'm very proud of. It's a journalism school at Northwestern, and there were very strict rules that as a journalist you would try to adhere to. But if you're an influencer and all of a sudden Volkswagen says, "Hey, we're going to fly you to Europe to drive the ID Buzz, and we're going to pay you to do a TikTok," that's like you just won the lottery. This is what you don't have all that background. So I can't be down on influencers for that. They're just doing what they think is
Right.
the smartest thing for them.
But so then the question is,
Yeah,
we have this question all the time. So if you get paid to go to some of these events, and they pay for your hotel, your airfare, and they feed you, is that the same thing?
No,
I
it's
know it's a tough question, and a lot of
yeah.
people do ask
So
that.
let's think on that. We're gonna take a quick break here, and speaking of paying bills, but we're gonna come back and let's talk about that, because I think a lot of people wonder about that. How much influence are we getting because we do or don't have trips paid for by us for us? All right, we'll be right back with The Drive with Lauren and Karl.
Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl. Our special guest is Mica of TFL Cars. Make sure you check out all of his channels. He's got some really great content, and they are very different than any other car review channel because they actually buy the cars, they test the cars, and they do a lot of things that you won't see anywhere else. Welcome back to the show with us, Roman. You've got some really great stories. You were talking before the break about the change and what's going on. So we'll let you continue that, because this is a question a lot of not just journalists, but consumers have, like, are you getting paid? How does that work? What if you go to these events? And many people don't even post pictures of where they're located because it causes doubt in your validity of you being a reporter. So how does TFL handle that?
Yeah, so we don't take any money from car manufacturers. Okay, I shouldn't say that. If you watch a YouTube video and you see us review, let's say, a Silverado, and there's a commercial for a Ford, that's YouTube getting paid by Ford to promote that Ford. And then we're getting, of course, paid by YouTube, but we don't have any direct relationships with like manufacturers where we will take any money from them to review a car. The way we make money is we do advertise, but we advertise one of our best channels is a truck channel. So for instance, one of our biggest advertisers is a hitch company, WaySafe, and so all the products around the automotive industry. And so in this case, it's hitches. In the case of our off-road channel, it's Onyx Off-Road, and so all the stuff around it. But as a traditional journalist, it just seems really wrong to like review a car and then, by the way,
Yeah.
Chevy paid me to say this. That's not a
Right.
review. That's a commercial.
Right. That's true. And there are some people out there that are car reviewers that are getting paid. We do know that. And I think that's what you do that's different. I think that you're honest about it, and you do buy some of these vehicles, and I don't see most of the car reviewers doing that.
Yeah, and when you buy them, your skin's in the game. It changes it, right? So
Mhm.
when let me give you an example. We love Land Rovers,
Mhm.
and we bought a Land Rover Defender to review. And Tommy and I took it. We bought it and we took it right up to the mountains, and we got a check engine light like right away. It had 178,000
Mhm.
miles.
Wow.
And I'm going to shorten the story, but basically what it ended up happening is we went through 3 Land Rovers before we got one that worked. This was when it first came out, when the Defender first came out.
Wow.
And that's hard because we damaged our relationship with Land Rover by doing that. But at the end of the day, when you buy a new car and 168 miles later, it's at the dealership and you don't have access to that car, you really feel that pain. And you
Yeah.
especially feel the pain if you're in the truck world and that truck is like your tool, the biggest tool, as Ram likes to say, in your toolbox. And for us, all of a sudden, we're not making videos. It's sitting there trying to get fixed. And so it's a difficult rope to walk, because on one hand, you want to work with the car companies because they have the keys to the kingdom, right? They have the ability to get you first access. They have the ability to make interesting content. And on the other hand, you're representing the consumer who, if we're in this case, we're the consumer who ends up buying, in this case, it was a $60,000 vehicle, and it's at the dealership because the check engine light came on after whatever it was, 168 miles. You do feel the pain, and so your skin is in the game. And that's a difficult tightrope to walk, and it's hard to do that because our business depends a lot on having access to those cars. And so obviously Land Rover is not happy about what we're reporting, but on the other hand, it broke.
Right.
It's
And
just
you
it.
had a
Yeah.
problem with
Well,
Ford too, right?
Yeah, we got blacklisted. That was hilarious.
Really? You got
Yeah,
blacklisted from Ford?
yeah.
Because
So our truck
when
channels
you're
are
buying these vehicles, it's your money.
our
So,
truck our truck channel is our biggest channel. I think we're the here Pongarilla when it comes to trucks, because we do this test called the Ike Gauntlet, where we actually tow with the truck. So we take them up this very steep grade going up I-70 from Silverthorne, Colorado, and we see how long it takes, and then we measure how many brake applications you have to do going down the hill. It's a really interesting and tough towing test. And so we really work closely with the truck manufacturers, and Ford was coming out with a new Bronco, which we were super excited about. And we have a rule: people send us pictures, and if the pictures are taken like on Ford property, we won't use them, because that is obviously something that belongs to Ford, and somebody took that picture without Ford's consent. But somebody sent us a picture of the Bronco, not part of Ford's, not on Ford property. It was completely outside of it. It had nothing to do with Ford. And it was a little picture that just showed those little auxiliary switches that the Bronco has,
yeah.
where you can hook up lights to them. And so we
Yep.
published that, and Ford blacklisted us. And so they uninvited us from the Bronco launch. And then they uninvited us from the F-150. They were putting out the last generation of the F-150. And so we were pretty upset by that. And Ford decided to do this like YouTube launch. So they had the unveiling, and the very first comment was #free TFL. And I was sitting there watching this, and then like every other comment, and I'm talking about thousands of comments, were like free TFL, free TFL, free TFL.
Oh my God, that's
And
awesome.
it was so humbling that our audience, our viewers, had like figured out, because we're very transparent. So we said, hey, we've been blacklisted. We told
You told
the
the
story.
truth.
Yeah. And all these people came to our defense, and it was, like I say, super humbling to see that. And it kind of made me feel like what we were doing was the right thing.
So are you still
yeah.
blacklisted with Ford?
No, I think our channel is probably too important. We sell a lot of trucks for a lot of manufacturers because of our reviews, not because we're selling them. I'm just saying because people use our reviews to make their buying decision. And I think Ford came to the conclusion that they were probably hurting themselves more than they were helping themselves.
You're right. And
Yeah,
it's
I'm
funny,
glad you.
that lightning truck, you got to tell us that story because you were all over the news, the national news, everywhere. You made mainstream media all over the place.
Yeah, we do towing tests, and I think we were one of the first publications to do to bring the attention that electric vehicles, specifically trucks, are really bad at towing. And I think people didn't know at that time when the Lightning came out that, you know, when you tow and when it's cold, it just kills the range of these things. So I think officially the Lightning, the long range one, had 320 miles of range. And realistically, in cold weather, you're looking at like 280. And then if you're pulling, let's say, 7 or 8,000 pounds, you're down to like 100 miles of range. And I think that made a lot of news because people didn't realize just how bad electric trucks are at towing long distances. And then, of course, the problem is you're using the entire battery to go 80 miles, and then you got to sit there for an hour. So it's like basically you tow an hour, you charge an hour, you tow an hour, you charge an hour, and that kind of became the talk of the town. And that's why we made a lot of news because I think we were the first to kind of show that.
Yeah, and I watched some of those videos you were doing, and I feel like you guys are so well positioned. People don't realize, but if you're in the Denver area and you can go up to Eisenhower Tunnel and go up those mountain grades, that's what the car companies use. You guys, I know when I lived there, I'm sure you see it all the time. You see a lot of testing going on. You see a lot of camoed vehicles because it's such a unique and extreme circumstance to be going between Denver and into the Rockies on those various mountain mountain ranges and those mountain passes. And I think people don't realize how valuable that is and how unique that is. So I'm glad you brought that up because it's very cool and put you guys in a unique position. And it allowed you to uncover this element of the F-150 Lightning that a lot of people would have never known otherwise. And it's proof that you guys are doing the right thing. Like you said, your audience came to your defense, and these car conflicts are kind of transitory, but your audience is forever. That's ultimately who you really want to be representing in the world. So. All right, we're going to take a quick break. This has been another great segment with Roman, and we will be right back with The Drive with Lauren and Karl. Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl and our special guest, Roman Mica of TFL Car, and I think he said about 14 other channels now that you've got going. And Roman, I wanted to talk about this thing that happened recently with the Waymo cars in San Francisco and how it caused such an issue. And I got a bunch of media outlets that were calling me and they were like, what happened? What happened? No. And, you know, I think there's a couple layers to this. And so I'm going to throw mine out there real quick. And then I want to hear what you think. But, you know, to me, it's a good representation of how you can test for what you think is everything in a lab, but you can never test for everything. And this was an example where you had this dependency for the cars on the grid, and the grid went down and all of a sudden the cars didn't know what to do. And they were just
no backup plan.
Yeah, right, Lauren. They had no idea what to do all of a sudden because they lost what they thought was a consistent guiding factor in the case of streetlights and all the power systems that operate within a city. And it caused a complete issue throughout the city and a major traffic snarl. And you just wonder, okay, how many more of those are there out there? You know, eventually we're going to get self-driving cars. We're going to get autonomous technology. It's going to all work pretty much all the time. I mean, even airplanes aren't 100% infallible, but, you know, air travel's pretty dang safe. We're going to get there. But how long will it take to get there? And it's a kind of a morbid thing, but I always say there's always these Hindenburg moments when you have new technology, right? And we know what the Hindenburg moment was as we decided to start traveling by air more and more. So how many of those are we going to have with self-driving cars? But what's your take on what happened, and how do you think that reflects maybe the path we're on?
I think we're there already, and I think the shame. So I want to end on a kind of a positive note. I think there's a shame. There's a lot of bad things that are happening, specifically by making electric cars and, in a way, autonomous cars political, right? It's become a divisive thing. It splits us, you know, from left to right. It splits us by age. But there is some good, I think, that's coming, and it's already here. And I'll give you an example of that. My father-in-law is 93, and I almost had to have that conversation with him about taking away his car because he kept, you know, when you have older parents, they'll start to have little minor car accidents and eventually they become major car accidents. And then you got to have that talk about, well, maybe you should. And that's a hard talk to have because in America, the car is so central to who we are and how we live. And it represents freedom. It represents independence. And I think there's been a message that's been lost, and that is the latest version of Tesla's self-driving, the latest one, the latest cars that have it, is actually really good. I mean, it's really good. And now what they've done is Tesla has included their AI Grok into the self-driving menu. And so if you're an elderly person and you're afraid of driving at night, or you're afraid of driving because you might get in a car accident, there is a Tesla now that you can buy where you can get in the car and you could say, hey, Tesla, take me to my local whatever Safeway, and the car 99% of the time will drive you there without incident. The problem with Tesla self-driving in the past has been, we had in the Cybertruck, is it works really well until it doesn't, right? And that until it doesn't can be a car accident, but those until it doesn't moments are happening less and less. And if I had parents, or if I were of that age where I could no longer drive a car, I would certainly look at buying a Tesla and then having the car drive itself. I have a friend who bought a new Tesla, like, I want to say 4 months ago, right when it came out, when the Model Y came out. Was that 4 or 5 months ago now? He said he's driven that car a total of 4 miles himself. 4 miles out of like 6,000 miles now. And this is a guy who's in his 40s, who's, you know, just a regular person, and he gets in the car and he says, hey, Tesla, take me. And for the most part, the car will do it. And I think if we depoliticize it, right, if you take kind of Musk and his politics out of it, and if you look at it just as a tool of mobility for people who don't have the option of driving themselves for whatever reason, we're getting to the point, or we are to the point, where you can actually have a car that you can talk to and will take you where you want to go. And for the most part, it'll take you there safely. Sure, it's still level 2. You guys understand, right? Level 2 means that you're no longer driving the car, but you're the conductor. You're sitting there and you're monitoring the car. Mercedes has level 3 in America, and that is you can actually no longer have to sit there like a conductor and watch what's happening. You can just get back and, you know, text or watch movies. And the difference is between level 2 and level 3. On level 2, the responsibility is on the owner of the car, whereas on level 3, it falls on the manufacturer. So if you're driving if you're in a self-driving Mercedes and it crashes at level 3, then it's Mercedes' fault. If you're in a Tesla and it crashes, it's your fault. It's a big difference in terms of liability. But Tesla is so close to that level 3 right now that if I were in that position and I had elderly parents, or if I were elderly, I would seriously look at buying one, because I think the thing can actually, for the most part, like I said, drive you around without you ever having to touch the thing. Yes, there will be moments that might be terrifying, and I know that's a big if, but if it's that or losing my independence, I'll take that.
Right. And it's funny because Tesla did put out a statement just after Waymo was saying, oh, we're down. Our cars are literally parked in intersections, saying our systems work. If you need a taxi and you're in the San Francisco area where the power outage was, and it was quite a bit of the city, it said you can contact a Tesla robo-taxi and it will pick you up. So that's interesting that Elon uses his backup, which is probably Starlink, which is what he owns, but still without traffic lights, there's no way to communicate where you and I would know, oh, it's a 4-way stop now. So I will be careful and look around. But now that you've got cars seated all over the roads, it did create a lot of hazards, and it does create a lot of anxiety for people. And I think it causes them to rethink this. Do we want autonomous cars? And the other big factor that still has, I don't care where we are, we still have not resolved a permanent firewall or protection that allows these cars not to be hacked. And nobody has that, not Tesla, not Waymo, not anyone. So until that is 100% locked down to protect the people that ride in these vehicles, I don't see consumers jumping on board yet. But having something that works like Tesla is probably one of the best systems that's available on the market today.
And to be fair, we had no power here for the last 3 days, and I almost got T-boned like 3 times by normal people, you know, blowing through stoplights with no lights flashing, even though the rule is, right, if there's a stoplight there, even if it's not working, you stop. So, I mean, this is not just autonomous cars. This is people also kind of
bad driving. Bad driving.
The standard between computers. The standard between computers and regular people, and you know, computers are not allowed to make mistakes, and regular people make them all the time, as we both know. But as all 3 of us know. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We will be right back with more The Drive with Lauren and Karl and our special guest Roman Mica. Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl, and this segment is brought to you by Karl Brauer Cars. That's, of course, my YouTube channel, and I'm doing a couple of videos a week, lots of executive interviews, lots of road tests, a little bit of everything on that channel. What I want to talk about in this final segment for the show today is, what do we see coming for 2026? And a quick retrospective, in 25, I think what we saw happen was a massive shift in the electric vehicle momentum. And We just recently were told now that there's no ID Buzz, Volkswagen ID Buzz for 2026. I mean, this was like a big deal car and all. They showed that in Detroit in 2017 as a concept. I think they showed it in like the 2000s as the first thought of bringing back that bus, and everyone was scrambling for it. It was one of the biggest news stories of mid to late 24, and a year later, we're being told it's not coming back because of their inability to sell those vehicles. Lightning's been canceled, $19 billion write-down by Ford on their EVs. 25 was a rough year for EVs. What do you guys think, Lauren and Roman, what do you guys think is coming in for 26? What will be the big story a year from now as we, or a little over a year from now as we've closed out 26?
All right. Well, we know the EVs are still going to be in the mix. I just think there's going to be a lot less of them. A lot of brands are going to wake up. Certain brands have been very smart. Like Hyundai said, they're going to make it like a Lego. Whatever you want, we'll put on that platform. You want electric, you want plug-in hybrid, you want hybrid, you want gas, we'll build it. And they also build diesel for other countries. Of course, that's hopefully coming back to the US, but I don't see that coming for 26, maybe way down the road. But to me, I think the hybrids are what a lot of people want, especially if you're leasing, makes a lot of sense. And in past shows, we've had our mechanic expert, Greg Damon, tell us that they're really expensive to maintain. So I think that's going to become the leasing sweet spot, hybrids, and I think a lot more gas cars. And thanks to Stellantis, it looks like we're going to get the Hemi back.
Yes.
Roman, what do you think?
I think people are going to be even more confused between what a BEV is and what an EREV is and what a plug-in hybrid is. It's going to be even crazier. I'll give you the bad and I'll give you the good. So I think 2026 will be known for more recalls because car companies are really good at building cars, but really bad at writing code. And when an electric car or even a much more, let's call it a computer-defined car, goes bad, it bricks itself. And we really haven't seen that, right? Where cars it happened to me in the Hummer EV, where you're just stuck on the side. Actually, I was stuck in the middle of the road during traffic, and I could not get the car to even go into gear or out of gear so I could tow it out of there. And this phenomenon of cars bricking themselves, or in this case trucks, is just going to keep increasing because software is hard and car companies suck at doing it. At least I haven't seen any that are good except for Tesla. But more on a positive note, I think 2026 will be the year of the plug-in hybrid, where people are going to understand that, like the BMW i3, which came along like in 2014, 11 years later or 12 years later, people are going to see that that might be the solution for them, where they can drive with the quietness of electricity, with the economy of electricity around town. And then if they want to go visit, their friends across the state or across the country, they can just have that motor be powered by an electric engine. Sorry, the electric motor be powered by an internal combustion engine, and the engine kicks in and you can just drive that thing like it's a normal car. So I think the plug-in hybrid is going to be a very big story in 2026. We know Ram's coming out with one. We know that Scout has a plug-in hybrid.
Shifted.
Yeah, they shifted. And Ford has also said that they're going to go plug-in hybrid. And I think this is the beginning of that here in America. We actually reviewed one by a Chinese car company called the Shark, the BYD Shark, which is a plug-in hybrid pickup truck. And Andre drove it down in Texas, and he thought it was really good.
Yeah, we drove a bunch of the I would call it Asian Chinese cars for World Car, and we got to drive BYDs and MGs and a bunch of other really unique product. But we're not going to get Chinese cars here. I just don't see that happening. Basically protecting all the car manufacturers that are building here. But you're going to see some of that technology, I think, making its way here one way or the other. But the final assembly will be here in the US. Otherwise, there's going to be some serious tariffs.
All right, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You're BYD and you buy Chrysler and you rebrand the BYD Dolphin as a 300. You see that happening?
That could possibly happen, because remember, Chrysler's in huge trouble. Of the 14 brands, and actually Karl and I were talking about this off here, of the 14 brands they have, many of them are about ready to go away. And yeah, they'll probably no longer offer Alfa Romeo or Fiat here, or maybe even Maserati, because they're just not selling well. But then what do you do with a brand like Chrysler where you have two products? But if there is a partnership or purchase, which is highly likely because the Chinese have the money, I think that changes everything. But production's going to have to be here in the US, which will definitely increase the price, which is where BYD shines in other countries. They just cut the price in half of everything else that's on the market.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100% on the PHEVs, Roman. I think they're an excellent middle ground between EVs and internal combustion, and you get the best of both worlds. And I think everyone's starting to figure that out. All right, this has been a great episode here, and thank you so much for joining us, Roman. Everyone go out and check TFL Car, TFL Truck, and his Japanese and his off-roading channels. There's a lot to be seen over there on YouTube. He's building his own Peterson empire, but now it's going to be the Roman Mica empire.
Yes.
Thank you again for joining us, and we will be back next time on The Drive with Lauren and Karl.
You've been listening to The Drive, your trusted source for the latest car news, expert reviews, and real insights into the automotive world. Thanks for riding along with us today. You can check out the entire archive of every episode on our YouTube channel, The Drive with Lauren and Karl. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and join the conversation by leaving your comments. We love hearing from you. Until next time, stay safe, enjoy the ride, and we'll see you right back here on The Drive.